My son shoved me at our 4th of July barbecue and yelled, "You're just a burden now," as my steak tumbled into the dirt. Have you ever given everything to your child, only to be discarded like you never mattered? I worked 3 jobs to raise him alone after his father walked out, paid for his school, covered his debts. I even gave up my dreams. And after all that, he tried to sue me when I sold the house I built with my own hands. For 38 years, I poured everything into motherhood and almost lost myself in the process. But just months later, I found peace, real family, and uncovered a recording of my mother's lost song, one that changed everything. Stay with me, and I'll show you how I rose from that backyard humiliation and what I discovered inside her old diary. The neighbors clapped when I finally stood tall and said, "You're not my family anymore." And when my granddaughter slipped me a drawing that read, "Superhero Grandma," I knew I'd made the right choice. If you've ever felt invisible as a mother, please don't scroll. This story might be the one that helps you reclaim your voice before it's too late. Before we dive in, tell me a bit about you. Are you a daughter, a son, or maybe a grandmother like me? Leave a 1 in the comments if you're a woman, 2 if you're a man, or 3 if you feel like both sides matter. I read every comment, and maybe your story will inspire my next chapter. Let's take this journey together. My son's shove sent my steak tumbling into the dirt, his words slicing deeper than any knife. "You're just a burden now." The backyard blurred as I stood frozen, the weight of his cruelty pinning me in place. I'd tucked my mother's locked diary in my bedroom drawer years ago, its faded cover whispering of sacrifices I'd never dared to face. Today, those whispers felt like a warning. It was July 4th, 2024, and my suburban 4-bedroom house buzzed with life. The backyard hummed with 4th of July cheer. Grilled chicken sizzled on the barbecue, firecrackers popped in the distance, and red, white, blue banners fluttered between the oak trees. The air smelled of charcoal in summer, but my chest ached with something heavier. I gripped the tongs, sweat beading on my forehead, flipping chicken breasts as neighbors laughed over paper plates. Nate, my 35-year-old son, lounged in a patio chair, his phone glued to his hand. He'd always expected me to provide. Private school, college tuition, even bailing him out of debt. I'd worked 3 jobs after his father left, my hands calloused, my dreams shelved. Now he barely looked at me. "Hurry up, Mom," he snapped, rolling his eyes. "You're slowing us down." My heart stung, but I forced a smile, nodding like the dutiful mother I'd always been. Megan, Nate's wife, leaned against him, her designer sunglasses glinting. She thrived on control, always nudging Nate to dismiss me, to keep their perfect image intact. Clara, my 33-year-old daughter, stood by the pool, her face tight. She hadn't forgiven me for missing her wedding. Work had kept me late, another sacrifice she didn't see. Sophie, my 10-year-old granddaughter, hovered nearby, her pigtails bouncing. She loved my stories about my youth, but Nate's shadow kept her quiet today. I wanted to hug her, to tell her I was more than this. The hurt settled deep, like a stone in my chest. I'd given everything, my savings, my time, my youth, and yet I felt erased, invisible in my own home. I plated a steak for myself, the first I'd have all day, and carried it toward a folding chair. Nate stood suddenly, his frame towering. "What, you're eating now?" he sneered. Before I could answer, he shoved my shoulder, hard. The plate slipped, the steak hitting the dirt with a dull thud. "Want meat?" he mocked, loud enough for the neighbors to turn. "Go chew it at the nursing home, you burden." Megan's laugh cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Her hands can barely hold a fork," she added, smirking. Clara looked away, her lips pressed thin. Sophie's eyes widened, but she stayed silent, glancing at her father. Whispers rippled through the guests. Mrs. Larson's fork paused. Mr. Jenkins frowned. My cheeks burned, not from the sun, but from shame. I bent slowly, my arthritic knees creaking, and picked up the steak. The dirt clung to it, gritty against my trembling fingers. My voice was soft but steady. "What did you say, Nate?" He rolled his eyes again, a gesture I'd seen since he was 15. "It's a joke, Mom. Lighten up." Megan chuckled, and the neighbors turned back to their plates, uncomfortable. The festive chatter resumed, but it felt distant, like a radio in another room. I was alone in a crowd, my sacrifices mocked, my love discarded. I carried the ruined steak to the kitchen, the backyard's laughter fading behind me. The kitchen was quiet, the hum of the fridge my only company. I dropped the steak in the trash, my hands still shaking, and whispered, "I gave you everything." 3 jobs, sleepless nights, a house I'd paid for alone. None of it mattered to Nate. I'd been their mother, but had I ever been more than their caretaker? The question stung, sharp as a splinter. Something inside me shifted, not loud but firm, like a lock turning. I was done being invisible. As I wiped the counter, my fingers brushed a stack of cookbooks. One slipped, revealing a small, locked diary, its leather cover faded but familiar. My mother's handwriting glinted on the spine, a name I hadn't seen in years. My breath caught. I'd tucked it away after her death, too raw to open. Why was it here now, calling to me? I clutched the diary, its weight heavy with secrets. The hurt in my chest burned, but it wasn't just pain. It was defiance. Nate's words, Megan's laugh, Clara's silence. They'd pushed me too far. I'd raised them, but they'd erased me. Or had they? The diary's lock clicked open in my hands, a faint sound promising answers. What secrets did my mother hide, and what would they mean for me? The diary's open pages stared at me, but Nate's, useless, stung louder than any secret. My fingers traced the worn leather, its edges soft from years of neglect, as I sat alone in the kitchen, the hurt from the barbecue still raw. I'd found a faint recording tucked inside the diary, my mother's voice humming a melody I couldn't place. Could it reveal the regrets she carried, the ones I was starting to feel myself? It was late, the house quiet except for the soft chirp of crickets outside. An apple pie I'd baked for the barbecue cooled on the counter, its cinnamon scent heavy in the air. Suburban streetlights cast a faint glow through the window, painting shadows across the linoleum. I'd spent decades in this kitchen, cooking for Nate, for Clara, for a family that barely saw me. Tonight, I was done. I sat at the table, the pie untouched, my hands still gritty from the dirt on that steak. Nate's shove replayed in my mind, his hand on my shoulder, the steak hitting the ground, his cruel laugh. "You're a burden," he'd said, and Megan's cackle had sealed the wound. I'd raised him alone, working 3 jobs after Walt left, scraping by to pay for his private school, his car, his debts. All for what? To be mocked in my own backyard? My chest tightened, the hurt turning sharp like a knife twisting into anger. You ever bite your tongue just to keep the peace, until someone pushes too far? What Megan said next, it lit a fire I didn't know I still had. If you're still watching, drop a 5 in the comments, because from here on, everything starts to shift. Megan sauntered in, her heels clicking on the floor. She eyed the pie, smirking. "Can't even bake a pie right, Ellie? It's as old-fashioned as you." Her words dripped with scorn, her sunglasses pushed up like a crown. She thrived on keeping me small, propping up Nate's entitlement. My jaw clenched, my fingers curling into fists. "It's fine, Megan," I said, voice tight. She snorted, grabbing a soda from my fridge, and left without a glance. I wasn't her mother-in-law, I was her servant. The anger surged, hot and fierce. I was done pleasing them. A soft knock broke the silence. Lily Wong, my 83-year-old neighbor, stood at the door, her gray hair pinned neatly, holding a tin of homemade cookies. "Thought you could use these," she said, her eyes kind but sharp. She sat across from me, her floral shawl brushing the table. "My son stopped speaking to me when I wouldn't fund his schemes," she said, her voice steady. "You're worth more than their insults, Ellie. Don't let them dim you." Her words landed like a lifeline, pulling me from the hurt. I nodded, my throat tight. "I've given them everything," I whispered. Lily's hand squeezed mine. "Then give yourself something now." Her story, estrangement standing firm, lit a spark. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling but sure, and dialed Mark Reynolds, the real estate agent, as the clock ticked toward dawn. "Mark," I whispered, glancing at the hall where Nate slept, oblivious. "I need to sell the house, now." His voice was groggy but kind. "You sure, Ellie?" I looked at the pie, the kitchen, the life I'd poured into this place. I've never been surer. The call ended and the first light of morning crept through the window, soft and golden, like a promise. I turned back to the diary, its pages open on the table. Tucked inside was a small, ancient cassette, labeled in my mother's neat script. I slipped it into an old player, the one I'd kept for nostalgia. A faint hum filled the room, my mother's voice, singing a melody I didn't know, wistful and clear. The sound stirred something deep, a memory of her humming while she cooked, before life wore her down. The recording cut off, but a single phrase lingered. "My lost dream." My heart skipped. What had she given up for us? I began packing, starting with photos. Nate as a toddler, Clara's graduation, moments I'd cherished alone. Each frame felt heavier, not with love, but with the weight of my sacrifices. Nate's entitlement, fed by my endless support, cars, debts, a life I'd built, had turned him into this. Megan's cruelty only sharpened the blade, but Lily's words echoed. I was worth more. I taped a box shut, my resolve hardening like the dawn outside. Was I ever their mother, or just their caretaker? The recording's phrase, "lost dream," rang in my ears, a mystery I couldn't shake. I clutched the diary, my mother's voice a faint echo in the quiet kitchen. What had she given up, and why was it calling to me now? My mother's lost dream echoed in my mind, but Nate's denial, "You did nothing," cut like a blade through my heart. The diary's open pages sat on my nightstand, its words hinting at a sacrifice I might share, a truth I wasn't ready to face. Morning light spilled into my suburban kitchen, glinting off scattered farmers' market flyers on the counter. The neighbor's radio hummed with coffee shop chatter, a soft buzz of life outside my 4-bedroom house, moving boxes stacked against the wall, their cardboard edges sharp against the linoleum. I was done being Nate's servant, done letting his entitlement drain me. I stood by the sink, coffee mug warm in my hands, as Mark Reynolds snapped photos of the living room. His camera clicked, efficient and steady, capturing the house I'd paid for with 3 jobs, raising Nate alone after Walt walked out. Mark, a wiry 40-year-old with a realtor's smile, was my way out. "This place'll sell fast," he said, adjusting his lens. I nodded, my stomach tight. Nate was still asleep in the guest room, oblivious, his pride and financial failures, failed startups, maxed credit cards, fueling his expectation that this house was his inheritance. Nate shuffled in, hair mussed, phone in hand. "What's with the boxes?" he asked, voice sharp. I set my mug down, steadying myself. "You used my credit card again, Nate. $1,000 for what?" My voice was firm, anger rising. He smirked, leaning against the counter. "Golf clubs. You're just jealous of my life, Mom." My fists clenched. "You're selfish," I snapped, the words spilling out. "I worked 3 jobs for you." His eyes narrowed, but he shrugged, dismissing me like always. The anger burned hotter, a fire I couldn't douse. Later, I walked to Mrs. Larson's coffee shop drop-in a block away, where neighbors gathered over muffins and gossip. The air smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries, the radio playing soft country tunes. I wore my best smile, but my heart still stung from Nate's words. Sophie trailed behind me, her sneakers scuffing the pavement, her loyalty torn between me and her father. Nate and Megan joined us, uninvited, their presence heavy. As I poured coffee, Nate's voice boomed across the room. "She did nothing but complain," he said to Mr. Jenkins, gesturing at me. "Never sacrificed a thing for us." Neighbors gasped, forks pausing. My face burned, the mug shaking in my hand. "I paid for your school, your car, your life," I said, voice low but sharp. He laughed, loud and cruel. "You're delusional, Mom." Mrs. Larson's eyes met mine, pitying. The humiliation sank deep, like a stone in my gut. I left the shop, Sophie's small hand brushing mine as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Grandma." Her words were a flicker of light in the dark. Back home, Mark waited in the kitchen, sale papers spread on the table. My hands were steady now, the anger solidifying into action. I signed each page, the pen scratch loud in the quiet room. "It's done," I told Mark, my voice calm but fierce. As he left, Sophie slipped a folded note into my palm, her eyes wide with secrets. I tucked it away, heart pounding. Nate's denial, his erasure of my sacrifices, had pushed me too far. I'd loved him, but could I love someone who erased everything I'd given? The coffee shop's hum faded as I stood alone, the pen's scratch echoing in my ears. Sophie's note burned in my pocket, her scrawl hinting she knew something about Nate's plans. What was he hiding? Sophie's note, "I'm sorry, Grandma," warmed my heart, its childish scrawl a flicker of love in the dark. But the diary's letter, open on my new coffee table, chilled me with my mother's regrets, her words heavy with a truth I wasn't ready to face. The diary's recording, tucked between its pages, hummed with my mother's voice, a lost dream I'd ignored for years. It was a clue to a family truth, one I sensed might unravel everything I thought I knew. My new 2-bedroom apartment felt like a sanctuary, tucked in a quiet suburban complex. The small balcony bloomed with potted herbs, basil, rosemary, thyme, their earthy scent mingling with jazz drifting from a radio on the counter. The music, soft and soulful, wrapped around me like a shawl, easing the ache from Nate's betrayal. I was 69, starting over, and for the first time, it felt possible. I stood in the living room unpacking a box of keepsakes, my fingers brushing a framed photo of my mother, her smile bright from decades ago. I hung it on the wall, the nails tap echoing in the empty space. The diary lay open, its letter staring up at me. "I gave up my music for family," my mother had written, her script tight with regret. "It broke me. Don't repeat my mistake, Ellie." My eyes stung, tears blurring the ink. I'd done the same. 3 jobs, no sleep, raising Nate and Clara alone after Walt left. I'd poured my life into them, and Nate had called me a burden. The anger from that barbecue still simmered, but here, in this quiet space, a spark of hope flickered. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. Lily Wong stood there, her gray hair pinned neatly, a thermos of tea in her hands. At 83, her eyes held a wisdom that cut through my fog. "Thought you'd like some company," she said, settling on my couch. Her floral shawl brushed the cushions as she poured jasmine tea, its steam curling in the air. "My son stopped talking to me when I refused to bankroll his schemes," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I was his mother, not his wallet. You're not their servant, Ellie." Her words landed like a gentle push, lifting the weight of Nate's cruelty. I nodded, my throat tight. "I gave them everything," I said, my voice cracking. Lily's hand found mine. "Now give yourself something." The anger softened, hope seeping in like the morning light. Later, I checked my email on my old laptop, the screen's glow harsh in the dim room. Clara had written, her words tentative but raw. "I'm sorry, Mom," she typed. "I was wrong to pull away after my wedding. I found something, an old recording of Grandma. It might mean something." My heart skipped. Clara, my daughter, had been distant since I missed her wedding, working late to pay Nate's debts. Her remorse felt like a bridge, shaky but real. I wanted to reply, but my phone buzzed. Nate's first voicemail. "You're ruining our lives, Mom," he growled. "Selling the house? You're selfish." His words stung, amplifying the hurt, the sense that I'd never been enough. I deleted the message, my fingers steady, resolve growing. I wasn't his servant anymore. I stepped onto the balcony, the jazz fading to the herb-scented breeze. The basil's leaves brushed my fingers, soft and alive, like the life I was building. Lily's story, her estrangement, her strength, mirrored mine, a reminder that maternal love didn't mean sacrificing myself. Sophie's note from the coffee shop, still in my pocket, was a thread of hope, her loyalty a contrast to Nate's greed. Clara's email, hinting at my mother's recording, stirred something deeper. Was family blood or the ones who truly saw you? The email's attachment blinked, a fuzzy recording labeled Mom's Song. My pulse quickened. What song was my mother singing, and why did it feel like it held the key to everything? The recording's melody haunted me, my mother's voice humming through my dreams, but Nate's 12 voicemails screamed louder, begging and blaming, tearing at my resolve. I sat on my balcony, the diary's letter and Clara's email open on my laptop, hinting at a family truth that could change how I saw my past, maybe even myself. The community center buzzed with life, a potluck in full swing. Clinking plates and laughter filled the air, mingling with the cheesy scent of macaroni salad. I'd parked my car outside, Walmart bags stuffed with paper towels and soda from a last-minute run, their plastic crinkling in the quiet. This place, with its folding tables and handwritten signs, felt more like home than my old house ever had. I arranged platters of deviled eggs, my hands steady despite the ache in my chest. Carlos Martinez, a broad-shouldered 40-year-old with a warm grin, carried a tray of tamales. "Abuela Ellie," he said, his voice soft. "Your family here." His words warmed me, a balm after Nate's cruelty. Carlos had lost his mother young, and his kindness, calling me abuela, felt like a gift. I smiled, brushing flour off my apron. "You're too sweet, Carlos." He chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "Just truth?" Hope bloomed, fragile but real, pushing back the hurt from Nate's barbecue shove. In a quiet corner, I checked my phone, my heart sinking. 12 voicemails from Nate, each one sharper than the last. "We need you, Mom," he'd started, his voice fake soft. By the 10th, he was yelling, "You've left us homeless, you selfish hag." The word stung, his ungrateful blame twisting the knife. I'd paid for his life, 3 jobs, his tuition, his debts, and now I was the villain? My hands shook as I deleted each message, the phone's click loud in my ears. Anger flared, hot and sharp, but Carlos's laugh from across the room tethered me to hope. I wasn't alone anymore. Sophie slipped through the crowd, her pigtails bouncing, her sneakers silent on the linoleum. She pressed a folded drawing into my hand, her eyes wide with love but shadowed by fear. "I miss your stories, Grandma," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The drawing showed us together, stick figures under a sun labeled Grandma and Me. My throat tightened. Sophie, only 10, loved my tales of dancing in the 60s, but Nate's influence kept her torn. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, tucking the drawing into my pocket. Her small smile was a lifeline, a reminder of the love I still had. My phone rang. Clara. Her voice was soft, heavy with regret. "Mom, I found an old photo of Grandma with a guitar. It's tied to that recording I sent. I'm so sorry for pulling away." Clara's distance had started when I missed her wedding, working late to cover Nate's debts. Her offer to dig into the recording felt like a bridge rebuilding. "Thank you, Clara," I said, my voice catching. "It means a lot." Hope grew, but Nate's accusations echoed, pulling anger back to the surface. Could I save someone who only took? The potluck's laughter faded as I stepped into my car, the Walmart bags rustling beside me. Nate's voice crackled through a new voicemail, but I ignored it, my fingers tracing Sophie's drawing. Clara's photo of my mother with a guitar flashed in my mind, her music, her sacrifice, a secret I needed to understand. As I drove home, a shadow moved outside my apartment. Nate's voice, low and muttering, drifted through the dusk. "She can't do this to me," he said. My pulse quickened. What was he planning? Nate's muttering shadowed my doorstep last night, his low growl a threat in the dusk, but the diary's words, "Choose yourself," lit my path like a beacon. I clutched Sophie's note, my heart torn between fear and defiance. The photo of my mother with a guitar, tucked in the diary, hinted at a sacrifice I was only beginning to grasp. Her music, her dream, lost for family. Was I repeating her story or rewriting it? My apartment felt like a haven, soft light filtering through balcony curtains, the air sweet with basil from my herb pots. Outside, a neighbor's backyard party pulsed with slow jazz, saxophone notes curling through the evening. Iced tea sweated on tables, laughter drifting up as fireflies blinked in the suburban dusk. I stood by the window, the diary in my hands, my newfound freedom fragile but fierce. Walt Harper knocked, his silhouette tall and hesitant at my door. At 70, my ex-husband carried the same sharp jaw I'd loved decades ago, but his eyes held regret for leaving me to chase his career. "You've changed, Ellie," he muttered, glancing at my sparse apartment. His curiosity piqued, but his old dismissiveness lingered. I had to. I shrugged, my voice cool. I didn't owe him explanations. Still, his visit stirred memories of raising Nate and Clara alone, of nights I cried myself to sleep. I switched gears, testing Nate. "I asked Nate to help Lily clean her garage tomorrow," I said. Walt raised an eyebrow. "He won't show." I nodded, skeptical but hoping. Nate's entitlement, cars I'd bought, debts I'd paid, had shaped his greed. Would he prove me wrong? The next morning, my phone buzzed with Nate's text. "Car broke down, can't make it." My jaw tightened. Another excuse. Another betrayal. I paced the apartment, anger flaring. Clara called, her voice soft with guilt. "Mom, I remember you working late to pay for my college," she said, her words cracking. "I was so mad about the wedding, but I was wrong." Her remorse, born from misunderstanding my sacrifices, felt like a step toward healing. I swallowed hard. "I wanted to be there, Clara." Her sigh carried years of regret. "I know, I'm digging into Grandma's recording. It's important." Her support steadied me, pushing my anger toward resolve. Lily stopped by that afternoon, her cane tapping the floor, her eyes bright despite her 83 years. We sat on the balcony, the jazz from the neighbor's party fading into the breeze. "My son turned on me when I stopped funding his schemes," she said, her voice steady. "You're stronger than their greed, Ellie. Stand firm." Her story, estrangement, resilience, mirrored mine, reinforcing my fight for self-worth. I opened the diary, finding a note in my mother's script. My music was my soul, lost for them. My chest ached. She'd given up her career for family, just as I'd given up my dreams for Nate and Clara. I wouldn't let Nate's manipulation, his fake pleas of "we're family, Mom," pull me back. The audience would feel my anger, his hypocrisy stinging like salt in a wound. As Lily left, Sophie's small hand slipped a note under my door, her handwriting shaky. "Dad's really mad, Grandma." My pulse quickened. Her loyalty, her love for my stories shone through, but Nate's influence loomed. Clara's call, Walt's visit, Lily's words, they all pushed me forward, resolve hardening like the earth under my herbs. Love wasn't enough when respect was gone. I'd given Nate everything. Could I let him go? The party's jazz melted into the balcony's quiet breeze, my resolve as firm as the basil's roots. Sophie's note mentioned Nate's anger, a warning that chilled me. What would he do next? Sophie's warning, "Dad's really mad," burned in my pocket, its scrawl a quiet alarm, but Nate's cruelty shattered more than my heart. It broke something I couldn't name, something I'd held on to too long. The diary's photo of my mother with a guitar lay open on my table, her smile hinting at a sacrifice I was starting to understand. She'd given up her music for family. Had I done the same for Nate and Clara? The community center buzzed with life, a baseball game blaring on a big screen TV, the announcer's voice sharp against the chatter. Outside, a porch swing creaked under a starry suburban sky, its rhythm steady in the warm night air. I was 69, fierce and resolute, determined to protect the self-worth I'd fought to reclaim after decades of sacrifice, 3 jobs, endless nights, raising Nate and Clara alone. I arranged trays of popcorn and soda at the center's watch party, my apron dusted with salt. Sophie, my 10-year-old granddaughter, slipped through the crowd, her pigtails bouncing. "I told Dad you're strong, Grandma," she whispered, her eyes bright with defiance. Her love for my stories, tales of my youth, dancing under streetlights, gave her courage to stand against Nate's shadow. I squeezed her hand, hope sparking. "You're my brave girl," I said, my voice soft. Her small smile warmed me, a flicker of light in the storm. If your own child destroyed something sacred just to hurt you, would you still call it love? What Nate did next, it broke more than just a frame. If you're still here, drop a 6 in the comments. We're about to cross a line you can't uncross. Back at my apartment, the air shifted, heavy with tension. Nate stormed in, his boots thudding on the floor, his face twisted with rage. At 35, his pride and financial ruin, failed startups, a lost inheritance, fueled his fury. "You think you can just leave us," he shouted, spotting the moving boxes. My mother's photo frame sat on the counter, her guitar gleaming in the old image. Before I could speak, he grabbed it and smashed it to the ground, glass splintering. "You're nothing without us, Mom!" he roared. My heart cracked, but I stood tall, my voice steady. "You're breaking yourself, Nate, not me." The words cut through his anger, but his glare burned, a cruel act that would make anyone's blood boil. I'd given him everything: cars, tuition, my dreams, and he'd destroyed a piece of my mother. Later, Clara called, her voice thick with regret. "I should have seen your sacrifices, Mom," she said, her guilt raw from misunderstanding my absence at her wedding. I found another photo in Grandma's things. Her with a guitar. Her support, her digging into the diary's secret, felt like a bridge mending. Lily stopped by, her cane tapping, her 83-year-old eyes fierce. "My son tried to break me too," she said, her estrangement story a mirror to mine. "Don't let Nate dim your light, Ellie." Her encouragement, Clara's remorse, Sophie's bravery, they fueled my resolve, pushing back the anger that Nate's destruction had ignited. I knelt, picking up the shattered frame, glass pricking my fingers. A hidden note slipped out, my mother's script faint but clear. My music was my soul, lost for them. My breath caught. Her sacrifice, her loss, it was mine too. Nate's selfishness, bred by my endless support, had fractured our bond beyond repair. Sophie's stand, Clara's guilt, Lily's strength. They were my family now, the ones who saw me. Could I rebuild what Nate had smashed to pieces? The baseball game's cheers faded as I sat on the porch swing, its creak steady under the stars. My phone buzzed, Nate's voice on a call, planning to crash a community event. "She won't get away with this," he muttered. My pulse quickened. What was his next move? Nate's plan to crash my community event loomed like a storm cloud, his muttered threats echoing in my ears. But Lily's collapse shook me to my core. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a fierce need to protect the life I was building. The diary's note, my mother's lost music career, sat heavy in my heart, her sacrifice mirroring the strength I'd buried for years. She'd given up her soul for family. I was determined to reclaim mine. The hospital's sterile air stung my nose, beeping monitors a relentless hum in Lily's room. Her frail hand rested in mine, her 83-year-old face pale but her eyes sharp. I'd moved into my apartment to escape Nate's cruelty, but here I was, 69 and nurturing again, driven to hold tight to those who saw me. Outside, my balcony glowed with fairy lights, their soft twinkle a contrast to the hospital's cold fluorescence. A park bench under an oak near my complex waited, a quiet spot where I'd later find clarity. The bitter scent of cafeteria coffee lingered in my cup, grounding me in this moment. Lily's voice was a whisper, weak from the stroke. "You're stronger than their cruelty, Ellie." Her words, born from her own estrangement from a greedy son, hit like a spark. I squeezed her hand, my heart heavy but resolute. "I'm here, Lily," I said, my voice steady. "You're coming home with me." Her smile, faint but real, fueled my determination. I'd spent decades raising Nate and Clara alone. 3 jobs, no sleep, my dreams shelved. Nate's betrayal, smashing my mother's photo frame, had nearly broken me. But Lily's trust, her gratitude for my care, gave me purpose. I wasn't just escaping, I was building something new. At the community center, the air buzzed with plans for a charity event for abused elders. Carlos Martinez, 40 and broad-shouldered, stacked chairs beside me, his daughter Isabel, 12, hanging balloons. Their warmth, calling me Abuela Ellie, felt like family, a balm after losing my own mother young, like Carlos had. "You're making a difference," Carlos said, his grin wide. Isabel nodded, her ponytail bouncing. "You're the best, Abuela." I smiled, my apron dusted with flour from baking brownies. Then Nate burst in, his face red with desperation. At 35, his financial collapse, failed startups, no inheritance, drove his rage. "Get out, Ellie!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chatter. "You're embarrassing us!" Guests froze, balloons swaying. My heart raced, fear flickering. But Carlos stepped forward, calm but firm. "She belongs here, Nate." The crowd murmured, siding with me, and Nate stormed out, his boots thudding. The audience would see that his attempt to erase me, my resolve hardening like the oak outside. Back on my balcony, fairy lights casting soft shadows, I checked my phone. Clara's email blinked, her remorse raw. "This is who you come from, Mom," she wrote, attaching a recording of my mother singing at a concert she'd abandoned for family. Clara's guilt over my absence at her wedding, working to pay Nate's debts, pushed her to help. I played the recording, my mother's voice soaring, clear and wistful. Tears pricked my eyes. She'd given up her music just as I'd given up my dreams. I wouldn't repeat her regret. I decided then I'd donate part of the house sale proceeds to the charity, announcing it publicly at the event. It was my stand, my way to reclaim my place. The hospital's beeps faded to the twinkle of my balcony's lights, my fear giving way to purpose. Clara's recording and Lily's words wove a new strength in me. Carlos and Isabel's warmth built a family Nate couldn't touch. But as I planned, my phone buzzed, an overheard call from Nate, plotting with Megan outside the community center. "She won't win," he hissed. My pulse quickened. Is family who you save, or who saves you? Nate and Megan were lurking, their shadows dark against the center's glow. What did they plan to do? Nate's boots echoed in the lobby, a heavy thud that set my nerves on edge. But my mother's song, her voice soaring in my heart, roared louder. I gripped the diary, its truth fueling my stand, ready to face him. My mother's words scrawled in her diary burned bright. She'd given up music for an ungrateful family, a sacrifice I refused to repeat. Her loss, her regret, gave me the strength to claim my place at last. The apartment building's lobby glowed with holiday decorations, tinsel sparkling under fluorescent lights. A neighbor's thermos wafted hot cocoa, its warm scent mixing with the crisp December air. I stood near the mailboxes, my coat buttoned, the diary tucked under my arm. At 69, I was fierce, liberated, done being a servant to Nate's greed. This lobby, this moment was where I'd draw the line. Nate and Megan ambushed me as I stepped inside, their faces tight with desperation. Nate, 35 and unraveling from his financial ruin, failed startups, no inheritance, loomed over me. "You owe us, Mom!" he shouted, his voice bouncing off the walls. His hand grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. Megan, her designer scarf slipping, nodded, her eyes cold. "You can't just cut us off," she hissed, clinging to control. I pulled free, my voice steady as steel. I owe you nothing, Nate. My heart pounded, but I stood tall, my resolve unshakable. His grip, his demand, it was a threat, a final disrespect that would make anyone's blood boil. Clara appeared, her face pale but determined, clutching a recorder. At 33, her guilt over our distance, my absence at her wedding, working to pay Nate's debts, had turned to love. "Mom's right," she said, her voice trembling. I opened the diary, reading aloud my mother's words. I gave up my soul for family, my music, my dreams. I won't, Nate. My voice rang, clear and strong. Clara handed me the recorder, tears in her eyes. I played it. My mother's voice, singing at a concert she'd abandoned for us, filled the lobby. Carlos Martinez, broad-shouldered and protective, stepped forward, blocking Nate's advance. "Back off," he said, his voice calm but firm. At 40, Carlos saw me as family, his respect born from my community work after his own mother's loss. Nate's face twisted, and he shouted, "You made me this way, Mom." His justification, blaming me for his greed, stung, but it only sharpened my liberation. Lily, leaning on her cane, joined us, her 83-year-old eyes bright with pride despite her recent stroke. "You're stronger than they'll ever know," she said, her voice soft but sure. Neighbors gathered, their murmurs rising. Mrs. Larson, Mr. Jenkins, faces I'd known for years. I turned to Nate, my voice ringing. "You're not my family anymore." Megan stammered, her control crumbling, exposed before the crowd. The neighbors cheered, their applause a warm wave. Clara's nod, Lily's smile, Carlos's stance. They were my family now, built on love, not blood. My resolve peaked, shedding the servant I'd been. Did I lose them or find myself? As I stepped toward the stairs, my phone buzzed. Walt's voicemail, his voice heavy. "I found an old photo, Ellie," he said, regret thick for leaving me decades ago. The lobby's holiday lights flickered, echoing my shining resolve, carrying me toward the community center's glow. What did Walt's photo show, and why did it feel like another piece of my past? Walt's voicemail echoed with regret, his voice heavy with years of distance, but the community center's cheers planted hope in my heart. I stood tall, ready to claim my place. My mother's diary, its pages worn, spoke of her lost music career, a sacrifice that reminded me to root my strength in myself. Her words, "Don't repeat my mistake," pushed me to stand firm, to build a life on my terms. The community center buzzed with life, colorful banners swaying above folding tables. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of a freshly planted maple tree in the park outside. The suburban sun shone bright, casting shadows through the windows. At 69, I felt triumphant, grounded, my self-worth no longer a question but a fact, forged through decades of sacrifice. 3 jobs raising Nate and Clara alone. I stood at a podium, my hands steady, the microphone cool against my fingers. The crowd, neighbors, friends, my chosen family, watched as I announced my donation to a charity for abused elders. "This is my place now," I said, my voice clear, ringing through the room. "I'm giving back to those who've been overlooked, like I was." Lily Wong, 83 and recovering from her stroke, beamed from her seat, her cane resting beside her. Her pride, born of our shared bond and my care for her, warmed me. The crowd cheered, their applause a wave of support. I stepped outside to plant the maple tree, its roots a symbol of my new life. My shovel bit into the soil, the scent of earth grounding me. Carlos Martinez, 40 and broad-shouldered, clapped my shoulder. "You're unstoppable, Abuela Ellie," he said, his grin wide. Isabel, his 12-year-old daughter, nodded, her eyes bright. Their warmth, rooted in gratitude for my community work, felt like family, real family, not the one I'd lost. Sophie slipped through the crowd, her pigtails bouncing, her sneakers soft on the grass. "I'll write to you, Grandma," she whispered, her voice a secret shared between us. Her loyalty, Her love for my stories of youth shone through despite Nate's shadow. Clara, 33 and reconciled, stood beside her face soft with love. "You're her legacy, Mom," she said, handing me the recorder. I played it. My mother's voice, singing at a concert she'd given up for family, soared through the air. My heart swelled, tears pricking my eyes. Clara's remorse, born from missing my sacrifices, like working through her wedding, had rebuilt our bond. The audience would feel the weight of her support, the love that tied us. Nate lurked in the park, his silhouette dark against the oak trees. "She can't do this to me," he muttered, his desperation palpable but fading. At 35, his financial collapse, failed startups, no inheritance, had left him grasping. I answered his call, my voice calm. "You're a stranger now, Nate." His silence was heavy, his entitlement crumbling. As I hung up, a letter from Walt arrived, slipped under my door by a neighbor. Inside was a photo of me at 20, singing on a stage, my smile bright. Walt's note read, "I should have seen your strength then." His regret for leaving me to raise our kids alone marked his shift to respect. The photo stirred a memory, my own voice, my own lost song. The crowd's cheers faded to the rustle of the maple tree's leaves, their whisper mirroring my rooted liberation. Lily's pride, Clara's love, Sophie's promise, Carlos and Isabel's warmth, they were my family now. Nate's shadow couldn't touch me, but the photo of me singing, what else had I forgotten about myself? Can new roots grow stronger than old ones? The photo of me singing at 20 sparked a forgotten dream, my voice a faint echo from a life I'd buried, but Lily's laughter filled my apartment with joy, brighter than any stage light. I stood on my balcony, the memory fading, replaced by a warmth I hadn't known I could feel. My mother's diary taught me family is who loves you, not who you're born to. Its pages, worn and wise, had shown me her lost music career, and now I was living her truth, building a family that saw me. My apartment glowed, fairy lights twinkling along the balcony railing, their soft hum blending with the warm scent of tamales drifting from a neighbor's kitchen. The suburban sunset painted the sky orange, casting a gentle glow over my herb pots, basil, thyme, rosemary thriving in the evening air. At 69, I was peaceful, fulfilled, my self-worth no longer a question but a quiet certainty, forged through years of sacrifice and a fight to reclaim my place. Lily and I stood side by side, rolling tamales on the balcony, the corn husks crinkling under our fingers. At 83, her hands moved slower since the stroke, but her laugh was strong, joyful, a gift born of gratitude for my care. "You've built a real family here, Ellie," she said, her eyes crinkling. I smiled, spreading masa, the spicy scent grounding me. "I never thought I'd find this," I said, my voice soft. We swapped stories, her immigration from China, my days sneaking to jukebox dances. The laughter felt like home, a chosen bond stronger than blood. My heart, once heavy with Nate's betrayal, felt light, liberated from his shadow. Sophie slipped through the door, her sneakers quiet, her pigtails swaying. At 10, her loyalty shone, defying Nate's influence with her love for my stories. She pressed a drawing into my hand, her eyes bright. "You're a superhero grandma," she whispered, glancing back nervously. The sketch showed me with a cape smiling under a sun. My throat tightened. "You're my hero, Sophie," I said, hugging her. A text from Clara buzzed my phone, her words warm with love. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she wrote. "I'm visiting soon." At 33, her remorse for our distance, my absence at her wedding, working to pay Nate's debts, had rebuilt our bond. Her plan to visit was a promise, a thread of hope in my new life. Carlos hosted a family dinner downstairs, his apartment warm with the clatter of plates and tamale steam. At 40, he saw me as a surrogate mother, his own lost young. Isabel, his 12-year-old daughter, set the table, her ponytail bouncing. "Tu abuela Ellie," Carlos toasted, raising a glass of lemonade. "Our family's heart." Isabel grinned. nodding. Their love, born of gratitude for my community work, wrapped around me like a quilt. A letter from Walt arrived, slipped under my door by a neighbor. At 70, his words carried regret for leaving me to raise our kids alone. "I should have stayed, Ellie," he wrote. "Your strength shines." His respect, hard-earned, closed an old wound. My phone buzzed. Nate pleading, "You can't abandon us." His refusal to accept my boundaries after his cruelty would rile anyone. I ignored it, planting a new basil sprig, its roots a symbol of my growth. The tamales' warmth faded to the sunset's orange glow, my heart content with this chosen family. Sophie's drawing held a note. "I'll visit again soon." Clara's text, Lily's laugh, Carlos's toast. They were my place now. But Walt's letter stirred a question. Is family where you start or where you land? Clara's text confirmed a visit next week. What would she bring? Clara's text glowed on my phone, a promise of her visit shimmering like a beacon. But my mother's diary, resting beside my basil pots, lit my soul with a deeper truth. Its pages, worn from years of secrets, held a lesson that anchored my new life. Self-worth was my legacy, earned through decades of sacrifice and a fight to be seen. The community center buzzed with the chatter of our book club, paper cups of lemonade sweating in hands, the tart scent mingling with the warmth of shared stories. My apartment balcony, a short walk away, bloomed with basil and tomatoes, their green fragrance a quiet joy in the suburban evening. At 69, I was content, liberated, my heart full with a family I'd chosen, Lily, Carlos, Isabel, Clara, Sophie, not the one I'd been born into or bled for. The center's folding tables were strewn with paperbacks, their pages dog-eared from love, and the laughter of seniors, Mrs. Larson, Mr. Jenkins, faces I'd known for years, wrapped around me like a quilt. I'd spent decades raising Nate and Clara alone, 3 jobs stealing my sleep, my dreams shelved to pay for their lives. Nate's betrayal, his shove, his cruel words, the smashed photo frame, had nearly broken me. But here, surrounded by people who saw me, I'd found my place. I stood at the front table reading from To Kill a Mockingbird, my voice steady, rising above the clink of cups. Atticus says you never really understand a person until you climb into their skin, I read, my eyes meeting Mrs. Larson's. Her glasses slipped as she nodded, smiling. "You're our heart, Ellie," she said, her voice soft but sure. I smiled back, my apron dusted with sugar from the oatmeal cookies I'd baked that morning. The words sank in, heavy with meaning. I'd been Nate's servant, Clara's absent mother, but here I was Ellie. Friend, leader, family, the center's mismatched chairs, the bulletin board pinned with potluck flyers, the faint hum of a ceiling fan. It was home. Liberation washed over me, complete, like the first deep breath after a storm. I'd fought for this, not with fists, but with choices. Selling the house, cutting Nate off, choosing myself. My mother's diary, its final line urging me to choose yourself, had been my guide. I walked home under a sky streaked with pink, the suburban streets quiet except for the distant bark of a dog. My apartment balcony glowed with fairy lights, their soft twinkle dancing with the scent of basil and tomatoes. Lily sat in a wicker chair, sipping lemonade, her 83-year-old hands steady after months of recovery from her stroke. Her gray hair was pinned neatly, her floral shawl draped over her shoulders. "We're family, Ellie," she said, her voice joyful, thick with gratitude for the care I'd given her, driving her to therapy, cooking her meals, listening to her stories of immigrating from China. I sat beside her, the lemonade cool in my hand, and we talked. "Remember my first day here?" I said, smiling. "You brought me cookies." She laughed, her eyes crinkling. "You looked lost. Now look at you, blooming like your tomatoes." Her story, her estrangement from her son, mirrored mine, a bond forged in shared sacrifice. We swapped tales, her crossing an ocean, my sneaking to jukebox dances in the 60s. The laughter felt like sunlight, warming the places Nate's cruelty had chilled. A package waited inside, delivered by a neighbor. A new drawing from Sophie, my 10-year-old granddaughter. Her loyalty, her love for my stories of youth, shone through despite Nate's shadow. The sketch showed me with a book labeled Grandma's Stories, my stick figure self smiling under a bright sun. A note promised visits. "I'll come see you, Grandma." My throat tightened, tears pricking my eyes. Sophie's defiance, sneaking drawings past Nate's control, was a thread of hope, a generational love that tethered me. I pinned the drawing to my fridge, its edges curling beside a photo of my mother. Clara's text buzzed, confirming her visit. "Bringing something special," she wrote, attaching a photo of my mother's guitar, its strings glinting in soft light. At 33, Clara's love had rebuilt our bond, her remorse for misunderstanding my absence at her wedding, working late to pay Nate's debts, now a distant ache. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she added, her words warm. I typed back, "Can't wait," my heart full. Clara's promise, Sophie's drawing, they were proof that maternal love could heal, even after years of hurt. Carlos and Isabel invited me to dinner, their apartment warm with the clatter of plates and the spicy scent of tamales. At 40, Carlos saw me as a surrogate mother, his own lost young. Isabel, 12, set the table, her ponytail bouncing. "To Abuela Ellie," Carlos toasted, raising a glass of lemonade. "Our family's heart." Isabel grinned, her eyes bright. "You make the best cookies, Abuela," she said, giggling. Their love, born of gratitude for my work at the community center, wrapped around me like a hug. I'd organized potlucks, read to seniors, built a space where people felt seen. This was my legacy, not the house Nate expected to inherit, not the debts I'd paid for him. Nate was a stranger now, his absence a quiet victory, his cruelty shoving me, smashing my mother's frame, calling me a burden, had faded, replaced by this warmth. The audience would feel the satisfaction of his defeat, my triumph in choosing myself. Back on my balcony, I opened the diary, its final line glowing, "Choose yourself." My mother's sacrifice, her music for an ungrateful family, had taught me to choose differently. I looked at Lily, sipping lemonade, at Sophie's drawing, at Clara's text. "Family is who shows up," I said, my voice soft but sure. Lily nodded, her smile wide. Carlos's toast echoed in my mind, Isabel's giggle a melody. Clara's guitar photo hinted at a plan to honor my mother, a way to bring her music back. I planted a new tomato seedling, its roots sinking into the soil, a symbol of my growth. Did I find my place or create it? The question lingered, but the answer was clear in the faces around me. As the sunset faded, a new text arrived, not from Clara, but from an unknown number. "We need to talk, Ellie," it read, the tone formal, unfamiliar. My pulse quickened, the fairy lights flickering in the breeze. Who was reaching out now, and what did they want? The text from an unknown number, "We need to talk, Ellie," flashed on my phone, its cold tone chilling my bones. I stood on my balcony, the fairy lights flickering, my heart unsure if this was a threat or a bridge. My mother's diary, its pages worn, whispered of her music and her choice to prioritize family over dreams. That lesson, choose yourself, had rooted me in this new life, but this text hinted at a past I thought I'd left behind. My apartment balcony glowed under the suburban night sky, basil and tomatoes perfuming the air. The community center, a short walk away, hummed with a late book club, laughter spilling from open windows, lemonade cups scattered on tables. At 69, I was content, my self-worth a quiet flame, but this message stirred unease, threatening the peace I'd built with my chosen family. I sat at my kitchen table, the diary open, my fingers tracing my mother's words. Lily Wong, 83 and vibrant, sipped tea across from me, her cane resting against the chair. Her recovery, my care, had woven us closer, her gratitude a steady light. "Who's texting you this late?" she asked, her eyes sharp. I showed her the message, my voice low. "I don't know." Clara, 33, had texted earlier, confirming her visit with my mother's guitar, her remorse now love. Sophie, my 10-year-old granddaughter, kept sneaking drawings, her loyalty a lifeline despite Nate's shadow. Carlos Martinez, 40, and his daughter Isabel, 12, called me abuela, their warmth born of my community work. But this text, it wasn't them. My liberation, hard-won after Nate's cruelty, felt fragile, like a crack in a vase. The unease deepened as I walked to the community center, the night air cool, crickets chirping. The book club was wrapping up, seniors stacking books. Mrs. Larson waved, her glasses glinting. "Ellie, you joining us?" I forced a smile, the phone heavy in my pocket. "Just checking in," I said. Then a man stepped from the shadows, Mr. Harrow, a lawyer I'd met once years ago when settling Walt's divorce. At 60, his suit was crisp, his eyes cold. "Ellie, we need to talk," he said, his voice formal. "Nate's contesting the house sale." My stomach dropped. Nate, 35 and desperate, was clawing back, his entitlement, fueled by my past support, now a legal threat. "He can't," I said, my voice sharp. "It's done." Harrow's smirk would rile anyone, his challenge a slap after Nate's betrayal. The audience would see that this attempt to undo my freedom. Back at my apartment, Clara called, her voice excited. "Mom, I found a letter with the guitar," she said. "It's about Grandma's music, maybe a song she wrote for you." Her support, born from guilt over our past distance, steadied me. I opened the letter, my hands trembling. My mother's script described a song she'd composed but never performed, meant for me. "For my Ellie, to sing your own life," she wrote. My eyes stung, the words a gift across decades. Lily nodded, her smile warm. "You're her song now." I plan to perform it at the next community event, a tribute to my mother and my strength, but my phone buzzed. Harrow's email, detailing Nate's claim. "He says you coerced the sale," it read. The accusation after his shove, his cruelty burned. My resolve flared, but fear crept in. Could Nate unravel my new roots? The book club's laughter faded to the balcony's quiet breeze, my heart wrestling with unease. Clara's letter, Sophie's loyalty, Lily's warmth, they held me up. But Harrow's email hinted at a legal fight, a shadow I hadn't expected. Was my place secure, or could it be taken? The letter mentioned a song title, Ellie's Light. What was my mother's final gift? Sophie's note, warning of Nate's anger, trembled in my hand, but the diary's words, "Choose yourself," lit a fire in my heart, guiding me toward a freedom I'd never dared claim. My mother's lost music, her sacrifice for family, mirrored my own. Years of working 3 jobs, raising Nate and Clara alone, only to face their dismissal. But in my new apartment, with Lily's wisdom and Sophie's loyalty, I learned family isn't just blood. It's the ones who see your worth. Like a backyard barbecue where everyone shares the table, life teaches us to choose those who lift us up, not tear us down. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing yourself to love again. If this story touched you, share a memory of your own family's strength in the comments below. Your voice matters, and I'd love to hear it.